And at that time, New York was experiencing quite a shift with health crisis, and especially from our administration of AIDS. And what was it like to come to a town like this? Was it, were they talking about it? Was it on people's minds? Was it an open secret? How were they handling it at the time?
Well, I came to New York in March of 1986. Or maybe the first trip was the last week in February. But anyway, I was, I was out, at that point to my mother and to other people and stuff. It wasn't until years later that I had a conversation with my father, but I was having sex, and I'd heard of AIDS and safe sex and all that stuff. By the time I got to New York, safe sex was mandatory, and there were no other options, And if that hadn't been the case, I don't know if I'd be here today, It wasn't until many years later that I realized I had sort of a post-traumatic stress disorder about safe sex and all of that. And I was in a bubble, because when I got to New York, I sort of immediately started working out of town. First in summer stock, and then on a national tour, and then shortly after that, an international tour. So for the first 2 years that I was here, I was in and out of the city, and I didn't really settle into New York, living in New York City with like my own apartment. I mean, it was a sublet with other people, but not with just staying over until I went out on tour kind of thing. And that's when I really began to experience the conversation and the culture around HIV/AIDS. And also because of where I came in and how the circumstances and being in that bubble, I didn't know a whole lot of people. It's not like I'd lived here for 5 or 6 or 8 years and people that I knew were sick and dying. I was just a little too young for that, So I do know people that died in that crisis, which is still a crisis today. But it felt like it was a little bit at an arm's length to me, except for the sex part, because there was no way that I was going to not be, and I was scared. I was very scared. Yeah.